Hello and welcome to the next tour with
Ian?
and Antia. Welcome to our episode today.
Yeah, so we're on episode 40, Transition and Your Next Recruiter, with our wonderful guest, Melissa Henderson. Welcome, Melissa. It's so good to have you here.
Well, thank you both. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're so happy to have Melissa. So I got the honor of meeting Melissa through my work at MOA, and Melissa is president and CEO of Summit Executive Recruiting. And she does come from a military family. Her father was an Army officer, drug her all over the world, or maybe wasn't home a lot, like the case is sometimes in the military community. But we know you have a heart for this community, and that you've been working with military and veterans for a long time. So we're really happy to have you here today, and we're going to jump right in.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Melissa, thank you so very much. So, as Andia mentioned, you run an executive recruiting firm. So, recruiting certainly means something different in the civilian sector. You're not going into the strip mall to the Armed Forces recruiter and
Right,
sign me up for a job, right?
right.
But recruiting takes on many different forms in the civilian sector as well. Can you kind of parse out what those differences are and what that means to, transitioning service members and what they can look forward to?
Well, and I think this is a great question, and it definitely is something that really trips officers up, and even it trips up people that just are going through transition in their career for the first time, and they could already be in the private sector. So it's just something that is not understood very well, as even though it's been around a long time. So I'll break it down. There are really four areas of recruiters, or four kind of models of recruiters. And I'll talk about mine at the end because that's what's different, really different. The most common is the contingency recruiter, right? And the contingency recruiters do not have an exclusive on a search. So they get paid if they place the candidate, but they are not paid by the candidate. And so what they're really doing is juggling dozens of candidates and really kind of creating some disruption in the marketplace that makes it kind of difficult for other recruiters. So it typically you'll find the contingent recruiters more so at the lower levels, building out, let's say, a team of software developers or something like that.
Hmm.
You don't see it at the level of, flag officers or even senior executives as much, but they are out there. Retained search. And that's the classic, right? That's where
Mm,
I came from, Russell Reynolds and Gilbert Tweed International. And they are paid by the company. So they are retained. So a partner or a consultant, executive director, whatever your title is in the firm, you have the mandate or the assignment, and the firm is being paid by the company to find a pool of candidates for a given position. And
Mhm.
so they do not work for you, the individual. They just And they really don't have time either. I mean, I living that world, executing 10 to 12 searches at one time, trying to bring in new business at the same time, and just you're in meetings all the time and practices. And it's just like, when do I get my search work done? And we would all kind of wander around the halls and say, I just need time for execution. I just need to execute, meaning do the searches. So that is really at this level, or the level that I'm at as well, really where the main is. And then there's in-house recruiters. You will see them at the corporate level, typically, within HR, but there's also a lot of equity firms now that have brought in their own internal recruiters. They are typically a partner or a senior individual from a Russell Reynolds or a Spencer Stewart or a Korn Ferry, Heidrick, one of the big firms. And they go out
Mhm.
and they've decided to go into a private equity firm and do the search work in their portfolio companies. And so that's
right.
a little bit of different one. And then you have the in-house that are in the HR department. So I see that in the work that I do with my clients, and I'll get to number four here in a minute, is that for me, ideally, there is no recruiting firm. But if there is, that's great because I am happy to work with them. But you will even see at the most senior levels a chief financial officer search where they will run it internally. I just was working on a board engagement where they did not retain a firm to do that work. And time and again, as they have refreshed their board, and this is a publicly traded board, they have processes to just do it on their own. So
Huh.
it's really a bag. Then there's Summit or Summit Executive Resources. Founded the firm in 2009. So been quite some time. Noticed a gap in the market where the interest of the executive was not being served. And
Hmm.
so, very much an agent, like a sports agent, a literary agent, a sports agent. And I am personally retained by the individual executive to do their search for them and to be their agent. So I am very much on the sell side, you could say, when I'm out in the marketplace. So that's a very different model. There's not a lot of the
Wow,
up
that's
doing that. Yeah.
yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, just the different types of, what's going on there. And
And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, if you're from this world, right, you are from, in the military space your whole career, you don't even know that this kind of stuff exists. I mean, I just recently learned about how all of this works and I was shocked.
oh, for sure. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
very unique.
Well, and thank you. It's it's really an exciting thing to do, and it's been incredibly rewarding how I've been able to transform careers, whether they are transitioning for the military or someone, loses their position because of an acquisition or,
Mhm.
or some unforeseen circumstance and they are suddenly looking for their next C-suite role and they've never had to do that before. And oh, by the way, their network is pretty bad too. So I'm I'm here to fill that gap, and really, it's a very rewarding position and role to be in, but it is definitely very hard work because again, there's not a lot of us doing it, so it's not a mainstream model, right? So
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
kind of evangelizing while you the model while you're representing the executive, and so it's just a lot of work to get the focus, but it does happen.
Yeah. So thinking about that, there is obviously a very specific clientele that you work with, a specific candidate, this service like this, right? This agent that you are for the recruit or for the job seeker. There's a specific candidate that this is right for. Can you talk a little bit about like who that person is and maybe how you go about screening them or having a short conversation to see how that will fit in with what you're doing and with what their needs are.
Right, right. So our client is really a senior leader. And when I say that, I mean a C-suite executive, CEO, CFO, chief marketing officer, general counsel. You just go through the senior leadership team is our ideal client. And what's important is the investment that they're making in themselves to have our firm do this kind of work for them because it is not contingent. It is a retained relationship and there is a big success fee on the end. And so they are really kind of partnering and entrusting that we will do really great work for them. Fortunately for Summit, kind of coming out of the gate in 2009, we started off doing really great work and continued to do great work. And this is not like a commercial for us, but really, it's 95% of our client base, potential new client base comes through referral. And so we've done great work for someone else that that person's wondering how they got there, how'd they get on that board, and then we get the next phone call. So I have the very, very good fortune and grace that I do not go out and cold call for new clients. And in the potential new client part of my work, it is really vetting whether they could be a great client for our firm. And they're vetting us too to
Mhm.
and they're going to make a big investment and can we get it done for them? I think what makes them an ideal client is that they are able to articulate, at least at a primary level, where they think their unique value proposition is to the marketplace.
Hmm.
And particularly in this market, it is the most incredibly competitive, crowded noisy market I have seen in an incredibly long time. And on the board side of the practice, it is just saturated. And so you've got a lot of executives out there vying for corporate board seats that really do not have that unique value proposition. So that
Hmm.
ability to kind of, sit down, get clear, be realistic about, what they're really positioned to do next, and be a little bit open-minded too, because we have found some pretty unique pathways for our clients that they didn't see coming in.
Hmm.
And then, I just say, and this is a case story on our site, communication is key. If we are communicating and we are partnering and collaborating, these engagements go really, really well.
Melissa, you talked a lot about having these, unique clients with significant value proposition requirements to be able to ensure that you are successful as a firm. And you've been doing this for several years, as you mentioned, in this particular community, serving senior officers in particular in the C-suite. I'm sure you have tons and tons of stories. Is there any that particularly stand out to you kind of as a beacon of what is in the realm of possible? I'd be interested if some of our viewers and listeners can be able to find themselves in a story like that, perhaps.
I have an absolute favorite, and it's actually a case story on our site, but I can't help it because he was a fabulous client. Everything I said about communication and collaboration and just very clear about where he saw himself and where he didn't see himself. And this individual is a two-star general, 34 years in the Air Force, combat
Go Air
pilot.
Force.
I'll allow that Army over there, but that's okay. That's one handy. So Thunderbird pilot, Thunderbird instructor, combat pilot, then operations, policy, and acquisitions. I mean, just really a stellar career. And I will say to him often, okay, can you tell me again what position you were when you were a Thunderbird pilot? And he was like, well, I was position 3. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's the guy who's flying the plane, turning his head sideways the whole time. And you are 6 inches away from someone else. He goes, well, more like, 18 inches, but it's just really fascinating individual. So he retired and he started on his own search. And he very quickly realized that he did not understand the executive recruiting realm. He had not nurtured a network that would really transition him into private sector. He was really feeling lost. And the one
Hmm.
thing that he did know was that he did not want to do that what so many others do. And it's not a bad thing, but he did not want to go into a business development role with a government contractor. He did not, and being in an acquisition role,
Hmm.
he did not want to go sell widgets to the Pentagon. And so he was very clear with me on that. And I was like, great, great. You just took the most obvious thing off the table. Now we're going to have to get creative. And so it was a really tough engagement. We started off looking at logistics firms, companies, and we were just really trying to stay away from the totally obvious. And then at this time, there was a trend that was evolving with law firms. And law firms were bringing in operating executives that could run the operations of the firm. Now, it happens that he has a JD that he got way back in his, you know, life. And so that was really great. And so what we did was we just kind of looked like took everything off the table, like scrapped it and said, okay, we're going to go to law firms and we are going to get you an executive position with a law firm. And that's what happened. He became the CEO of a Chicago-based law firm that was in a very high growth situation, acquiring other firms. They had never had operational leadership before, and so he established that for them. I mean, just all of the structure and everything. And so what was neat about that was one of the founding partners of the firm was also an Air Force fighter pilot. So he kind of they got each other, right? That was kind of
Right.
like a bonus. And so he was in that role for about 7 years. And then the
Okay.
firm decided that they were going to transition to an executive committee model, and they were not going to have an operational leader of the firm any longer. So he hired me again, and I placed him as COO of a law firm where he went in to on a real transformation project that was really focused on efficiency and transformation and saved them millions of dollars. And
Hmm.
so he has become a very good personal friend. I know his kids, that ones that just graduated from the academy, Air Force Academy, and the other is also in military service. So they're kind of following their father, and I know his wife. So it's just become that's how special these situations really can be. He recently
Yeah.
came to my sister's funeral at Arlington Cemetery. I mean, that's how.
Wow.
So you know, and I'll just say about him. His name is John. I'll say about John is that he left the rank. He left the insignia. I mean, I walked around more in awe of what he had done, and he would completely downplay what he had done. And just the humble nature of this gentleman made him a real joy to work with. And it made us really want to be successful for him. Not that we don't want to be for others, but just the personality in itself. And so, what's important about him is that, he had that law degree way back. And that ended up being a hinge for him later on
Right.
that he
Yeah.
didn't see. And so it's like he didn't start over, he compounded. And that's what is ideal when an
Yeah.
executive can look back and work with us, and we're going to work with them and figuring out how to and find those hinges and then compound on a career that's already there.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Being
It
able
is.
to
Yeah.
really, unpack all the wonderful things that somebody has done over their time in service and really take the unique traits and attributes that military service can bring, especially at that executive level, because of the complex nature of some of the things that I know our senior officials do day in and day out. It's incredible. And translating that into something that is, you know, perhaps nobody would ever think of. And that's really incredible how you're able to do that and make those linkages and unpack that and help somebody find purpose and value outside a
Mhm.
uniform. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah.
This whole podcast.
Yeah.
And it's not a magic wand. It is
It
not
takes
something
work.
where we open a
Yeah.
file drawer and we're like, voila, here we go. We're going to run off and put you here. I mean, these engagements can take 8 to 12 months
Right.
Right.
because they are, you're at the top. And so there's less of those kind of roles to go around. But also, on the board side, if it is their first independent directorship, that first one could take them a good year. And if you are building a board portfolio and that's what you're going to do professionally rather than a sitting executive role, that could take them 2 years. So we are with them a long time. And,
Right.
you know, it's not always beautiful. We're in it together. So we have, mutual frustration and we're just, we kind of go through it together. So
But how spectacular to be able to have a partner. I mean, if you're really in that position to be able to have a partner, an agent in this, and I feel like there's obviously a certain level of folks that are going to retain your services. It's not for everyone, but I think, being able to have a partner in that is so vitally important. And if you're seeking out those types of positions, this could be, really valuable and to just understand what the whole landscape looks like. And I think that's really why we wanted to have you on and talk about this recruiting space because it is so different and there are nuances, right? It's not a one size fits all when someone says recruiter, what that means. So I appreciate that so much, Melissa. I do want to give you a chance to, is there anything that we missed that you'd like to highlight before we kind of wrap up and move to the fun pieces of the
you
episode?
know, I just, I have countless success stories that I could go through that I just love to talk about. But I think that what I really want to get across here is that particularly in these, military career transitions, and again, seeing my father go through his own transition when he retired, and it's just not easy. And there's just so much that goes about that, right? But they're not starting over from zero. They're not.
Right.
And I really I believe that, and I'm kind of living proof myself, as I kind of even reflect on my own career of, sales at Xerox and then to Gartner, more selling, and then getting recruited into Russell Reynolds. And it's just kind of compounding and compounding where then, I even kind of look back early when in my 20s, I had a wedding cake business.
Wow.
And then, in my 50s, I came to Asheville and I won my first cocktail competition. And then, I've got that whole thing going on. So there's all creative things too that maybe you didn't have time for before that you can
Mm,
start bringing some of that energy back that make the whole package more exciting. Right. So again, it really comes back to, being a builder early on, right? And then having kind of the guts to do a startup,
mm,
right? And
yeah.
that without those experiences along the way, and again, I keep using the word compounding, but it's so true. You just, there's just so much opportunity that maybe they just don't see for themselves that they can really be carrying those pieces forward. So I hope that that is helpful. The hardest parts behind them, and then yeah, they've done a lot of
Yeah.
more difficult things, I'm sure, in various aspects of their military lives. So, yeah, so I hope that is helpful.
Yes,
Yeah,
I think
most definitely.
definitely.
So I'd like to now take a lot of those incredibly wise words, by the way. Really appreciate that insight. And I would like to couch our next bit, which is what's in your rucksack, but I want to do it in a little bit of a different way. You've got really unique insight and perspective into what are the best qualities that somebody leaving military service, particularly at the executive level, should bring with them to be the most successful for their next endeavor, but also what is the biggest hindrance that they sometimes can bring with them that you wish they would just leave behind. So we'll just kind of couch what's in your rucksack in your perspectives on what you've seen, both the best and the worst for others that you've helped.
Good. And I just, I want to give a little context if I can. So, here's my thinking and kind of why this matters. Officers operate from the intent behind an order, right? And not just the order. So, when the plan breaks at first contact, they still drive the outcome, right? Corporate teams are full of people waiting to be told what to do. And the officer who takes a fuzzy goal, fills the gaps, and owns the result is rare and immediately promotable. So that's kind of my backdrop to, you already know how to operate from intent when the plan breaks. And in the civilian world, that's not a skill, that is a superpower.
Hmm.
So just don't leave that in the rucksack.
Excellent.
And so, okay, what should they leave behind? And I've mentioned this a little bit before about, the insignia, right? In uniform, the insignia commands deference before you speak. In civilian life, nobody salutes your resume. Influence is earned one relationship at a time, and you trade positional authority for earned authority. And that earned kind travels a lot further. So,
Yeah.
the
Wise words.
rank got you respect by default, and out here, you earn it by transaction. And you leave the insignia at the door, but you keep the standards.
Mm.
100%.
Ooh,
Yeah,
wise
way to wrap
words.
that up. I love
Yeah.
you putting that giant bow right on that
You're welcome.
because it matters. It matters out here when the uniform is off. I've been out of uniform for just about 3 years, and everything you said really resonates with everything that I've experienced in my post military life. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. That was awesome. All right. Well, to the two truths and a lie. So this is going to be kind of fun for you. So knowing the military community like you do, I'm going to let you guess from our previous guest. So this is a 3-part series. We had a friend of ours on the podcast. Now this was his 3rd installment. We've kind of been following him through he's our longitudinal study. We've been following him through his transition. So he will come back again, but we make him always play our games every single time and come up with new ones. So these were his 3 items, and you have to guess which is the lie.
Colonel Jason Metzger.
Yes, Colonel Jason Metzger, very good friend of ours. All right, so 1, he completed the Air Force Marathon. 2, he did a half Ironman in Hawaii. And number 3, he came in 2nd in a CrossFit Garage Games competition in Ohio. Take a wild guess.
I think 3 is the lie.
Ooh, it was actually 2. He did not ever do a half Ironman, but he did do the Air Force
Yeah.
Marathon, which I was impressed about. And he's very into CrossFit. And of course, he did want us to remind everyone these are the garage games. It's not like the real
CrossFit
CrossFit
games.
again. So, but yes, that was his lie. So he did not do a half marathon or a half Ironman. Sorry, I already
Yeah.
forgot what I was saying.
I thought, why would he bother with a garage thing? He done all that already. I mean, why would he, that's
Yeah,
2
apparently
weeks.
he had it as a goal to do by the time he was 40 and didn't happen.
Yeah.
He turns 50 in the fall, so I'm guessing he's probably not going to do it by the time he turns 50 either. I think at this point he's going to focus on fishing.
Yes, as he should.
Body starts to give out a little. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Melissa, now it's your turn. If you give us 3 facts, then we will let our next guest guess which one is your lie. So we will not reveal on this episode, but please give
Okay.
us your 3 facts.
Okay. My 3 facts. Now we've talked about my father. So my father, Dick Henderson, he was a Vietnam era career Army officer, Signal Corps, Ranger, and a paratrooper. And yeah, I bootstrapped my executive agent firm on $40,000. And I didn't take a salary for 2 years. 3. So, like my dad, I'm a certified skydiver. I've done 63 jumps.
Wow.
Oh my
Interesting.
gosh.
Yeah, those are so wildly like disparate and not connected in a theme, but they sort of are also, which makes this really interesting. So I'm excited to guess once we go off camera, and we'll let it, of course, our next guest actually like do that on the recording. But Melissa, thank you so very much for being here. Your insights, your expertise, your perspectives. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you for what you do in a very niche space to help relocate and place, our senior leaders to continue to give back to this country and, to the civilian corps that we all have to assimilate into at some point anyway. So really appreciate what you do. And for our guests out there, check us out everywhere where you get podcasts. Of course, visit our homepage, thenexttourpodcast.com. YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the stuff out there. And Melissa, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you both for the opportunity.
Great. And we will see you all next time on the next tour. The views, opinions, and advice expressed by our guest on the next tour are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast, Andia, or any affiliated organizations. While we strive to provide helpful and accurate information, this podcast is for informational purposes only. We encourage listeners to consult with professionals or conduct their own research before making any significant decisions related to military transition or post-service life. The content is intended as guidance and personal perspective, not as official advice.